Okay, so I have a little bit of enforced downtime here in Clewiston because I have to wait till tomorrow morning to get a mail drop because I arrived in town on Sunday and a lot of things are closed. So I thought I might take a minute and go over my gear. I don't like doing this before the hike because it always seems like things change as soon as I get on the trail. So, starting with the big items. My pack. This is the standard ULA Catalyst pack. I got it a couple of years ago to replace my Osprey. Now, I love Osprey packs. If you don't know, if you have an Osprey and anything ever rips or goes wrong with it, you can send it in and the mighty guarantee they replace it. So I was using Ospreys because I use stuff a lot and I tend to destroy things rather easily. Unfortunately, when they replace the packs, you get a newer edition. I used to use the Aether, and once that reached 4.5 pounds, I just couldn't justify carrying something that heavy. You know, my whole pack, my base weight at this point is 20-some pounds, so 4 pounds empty, that's a problem. The Exos is a lightweight pack they have, and I tried that. The new edition, while it does come in green, big plus for me, just didn't fit me. So I went looking, almost got a Hyperlight mountain gear. I'm really glad I went with this. It was about $100 cheaper at the time. It's a really simple pack. It's just a giant sack, a kangaroo pouch, 2 pockets on the side. Weighs about 2 pounds, and this thing I have put through hell, so I'm very hard on things. I did the entire PCT in this. I have had it on the JMT at least once. I had it on the Theodore Solomon Trail, and when I was bushwhacking through the Condor Trail, I had it also. You do have to get used to not having things like a top lid with zip pockets or anything, but I put everything in stuff sacks, so it's no big deal. The patches I added for this trip because I heard the police and the Keys sometimes hassle you just because they think you're a vagrant versus a hiker. You know, small difference between the two. So I decided to go ahead and put these on just so I looked a little bit more like a hiker. Way I generally carry stuff, most everything is inside, and I try not to get into the main pocket during the day. I have a food bag in one pouch so I can eat. It just has, you know, a variety of snacks, whatever, till I get to camp. Usually on the other side, I have 2 smart water bottles and poles to my Nemo tent. This back pocket I use for a lot of stuff because, again, I don't like stopping and unpacking and repacking. So everything I might need during the day goes back here. I have a bathroom kit, which I'll show you later. I have my filter, and I generally carry my basic mosquito layers in there. So these pants I'm wearing are from Enlightened Equipment, and they're wind pants, and I use them as a barrier if there's mosquitoes. Or like this morning, it was 50 degrees when I started hiking. I was a little cold in my shorts, so I wore these. The rain jacket, it's easy to toss on, just toss back in here. Oh, one other thing on this pack, I carry a cell phone. My hiking shorts don't always have pockets in them, so I just have a cheap neoprene sleeve I hang off the front, and that lets me keep my phone handy because I'm always getting it out to take pictures, and I also listen to audiobooks all the time, so I can have the headphones plugged in. When I put the phone in this, I had a little bit of an issue just because when the phone's jammed in here, it would kind of tweak the headphone jack, and I felt like that was probably going to break my headphones sooner rather than later. It was also a little too common for it to fall out, especially when I was sitting down during the day. So I just want a little bit more protection, so I went with this. These hip pouches are actually useful for me. This one is kind of my basic first aid, things I might need during the day. I have my Metolius Climbers tape, which I use for blisters, Gold Bond, friction stuff, sun gloves, which I tend to take off and on, A&D, which I swear by every time I have some weird rash or abrasion or whatnot, and a buff that I can probably toss in my clothing. And then on this other side, this is where I keep my mask because it's pandemic time, so I need to have my mask off and on. Last year I was using the buff. This year, since I had to travel to get here, I want something I could wear a little more comfortably, so I just have a black OR mask. I have a small wallet I think I got from Z-Packs, just has credit cards and cash. I like having something to keep it all contained. I don't generally like using Ziplocs because I break them too easy. I have microfiber cloth because I'm always needing to clean my phone or my sunglasses. I usually keep my headlamp in here. Whenever I don't and I have it packed away, that's the day where it gets to the end of the day and I really don't want to dig into my pack, but I really need my headlamp. So I end up walking for like an hour, holding my cell phone out, using the light. And then I have my multi-tool. It's a little Gerber dime. It's the one knife I carry, and it's got some other useful things. My hiking poles this trip are black diamond 120 centimeter Z poles. They're aluminum. The only reason I have aluminum, because I usually swear by carbon fiber, is I literally found these along a trail last year, and my carbon fiber poles I pretty much wore out on the PCT. So why don't I like the aluminum? In my experience, the aluminums are more likely to get tweaked when you're walking along and it gets stuck in a rock. Before you know it, you're cranking on it, and the aluminum will bend. Now, the carbon fiber, I have broken one. It was in a rock slide, but it can't happen. But they're a lot more resilient until they break. So I'm currently debating what I want to do. I may get my old carbon fibers. I use the Alpine cork, which were adjustable. Eventually, after a couple thousand miles, the flint lock on the BDs did start to fail a little bit, and I didn't have the tools to adjust them so they would slip. Since these basically are solid, there's no way for it to slip. Now, the reason why I've avoided the Z-poles in the past is they only did 120 centimeters, and I normally like 115 centimeters for my height. What I'm finding is I can deal with 120, so I may see if I can just get one of the carbon fiber Z-poles, because the Z-poles, in addition to being solid, they fold up really, really small, which is nice. If I have to go inside of the store or something, I can just put them in the back so I don't whack somebody or drop them or leave them behind by accident. Food bag. So on this trip, for the majority of the trail, there is no requirement for a bear can. Now, if I am required to use a bear can, I will always use a bear can. I have one of those carbon fiber barricades. So along the PCT, that's what I use for the middle section. However, where it's just recommended or they don't have any requirements, I put it in something and I sleep with it right next to me in the tent. Personally, I have never had an issue with that. The one exception being I had fire ants get in my tent a couple of nights ago. And that's because I had this bag, hadn't sealed it up, I just folded it over and I had some sweaty cheese in there. Anyway, this is just a lock sack, op sack. It's theoretically smell proof. Sometimes people use them with the air sacks. I just needed something I could put the food in, and I liked that it was see-through so I could get at things without digging around inside a dark bag. Tent-wise, I'm back using my reliable Nemo Hornet 2-person. This is the tent I used for most of the PCT when I was solo. Big fan of this tent, with the one reservation that I'm 6 foot and it's barely long enough. So if you're any taller than 6 foot, unfortunately, this isn't going to work for you. It's a 2-pound, 2-entry tent, and it's double wall, meaning it has a rain fly. I used to have a Shire's tarp tent that I just loved when I was doing a lot of stuff in the Sierra. And I was really tempted to get one of those. Honestly, I'm very happy I got this because this is semi-freestanding. What that means is if I can't get any sort of stake into the ground, this will still mostly stand up. It just won't be popped up all the way. That has been very useful. Once on the PCT, I had to stay at the end of a switchback in Washington because there was no other option. And especially in the Keys section and in some of the canals, the only places I've been able to stop, the ground you couldn't get any sort of stakes in. It was pavement or it was hard rock, and you just can't get it in. So in those cases, for the parts of the tent where you're supposed to use the stakes in order to guy it out, I just put my shoes in those corners, and it works relatively well unless the wind's really high. So if this continues to hold up, I'm probably going to use it for the entire trail. This stuff sack I keep thinking I should really get rid of because it's kind of heavy. It has these additional drawers and things. I just haven't come across anything to swap it out with so far. This is my sleeping bag, really light, really compact. I went with a 30-degree mummy bag made by Western Mountaineering. Now, the downside with Western Mountaineering is you are going to pay, but they make the best bags I have ever seen. Personally, I own 2 Western Mountaineering bags right now and a Feathered Friends bag, and if I could swap my Feathered Friends 0 degree for the equivalent Western Mountaineering, I would do it in a heartbeat. Why am I in a mummy bag instead of the quilts that are so popular? I also own a Jacks or Better quilt. The mummy bags I like because it's kind of a comfort thing when you're out for long periods of time, especially if your sleeping pad is a little on the rough side like mine. I'm on a piece of foam. You're not lying directly on the foam, you're lying on the bag. And also when I'm cowboy camping, because I have a piece of Tyvek buried in my pack, I'd rather be in a mummy bag than a quilt, because the quilt you just kind of tuck underneath you, and if you move around at night, it's really easy to end up, on dirt with stuff crawling underneath the tent. On the PCT, for example, there were these big black ants. They didn't bite, but they were always crawling around at night. And when I was cowboy camping, if I had a zipped up mummy bag, it mostly kept them off of me. The other thing I have in here is an AirCore air pillow. Why am I carrying a pillow when it's extra weight when I could just use a stuffed sack full of clothes? I use the stuffed sack full of clothes also, but honestly, for the weight, the pillow really is comfortable and helps me sleep better. And also, when it's cold like last night and I'm wearing almost all of my layers, I don't have much of a pillow left in my clothing bag, so I'm a big fan of using the air pillow. Speaking of the sleeping pad, I used to be a big air mattress fan because at some point I stopped being able to sleep on foam. And then I start the PCT, and in the first, 300 miles, I popped 3 air mattresses. I was able to exchange them. The Nemo Tensor was the air mattress I was using, and Nemo's really good about replacing them. However, I wasn't about to do that the entire way, so I decided to try foam. This is the Nemo Switchback. It's not that much different than that yellow Thermarest you see people running around with. I gave it a try. I was able to sleep on it as I kind of hardened as I went down the trail. And the other thing I really like about this is if I stop for lunch, I can just throw this out and I have something I can, sit on. You see people online asking, well, what ultralight camp chair should I bring because I'd like something to sit on. You know what? You have this. You just bend it over the back of your pack. You can recline on it. It works really well. So, big fan of this. It's also almost indestructible, which is always a good thing when you're me. Water filter. So again, I'm using a superfluous bag, but I like being able to organize my stuff. I am going with the tried and true Sawyer Squeeze. I had a Katadyn B-Free last year, and they're really nice out of the box, but at least for me, they clog up way too quickly. This thing, under heavy use, and we're talking about, filtering 5 or 6 liters a day when I was on the PCT, just lasts longer. And again, this is the Squeeze. I don't really like the mini or the micro because slow flow and they clog up pretty quick. When they do clog up, I'm carrying the syringe, which is useful for being able to back flush. Basically, you just take purified water filtered water, and you flush water back through the filter. It declogs it for a while, it lets you extend it for another week or 2. These things, if you buy them at Walmart, are only $25, so it's not that big a deal to replace them every month or 2. Other advantage is when I was on the PCT, I used a smart water bottle as my dirty water, and then I'd just screw this on because it fits right on the smart water bottle, and then you just squeeze water through. These bottles seem like they're almost indestructible, so that worked fairly well. They are a little hard to fill in certain circumstances, so I went ahead and splurged this time around, and I have a 2-liter CNOC. These also fit right on the end of the smart water bottle. So this is for dirty water. When I was doing research on the Florida Trail, some people were mentioning that gators have a tendency, generally they'll avoid you, but small hands filtering right around morning and evening could be mistaken for prey. This just lets you scoop stuff up, then you can squeeze the water through. So far it's worth the wait. we'll see when it wears out. I may just go back to the bottle, but at least so far, these are nice. I've also heard from friends that when they do spring a leak, you can just use super glue and repair them. Katadyn Be Free, if you are one of those people that likes the Be Free, you can get a Hydro Pack and do the same thing. Hydro Pack's the brand, you can get it on Amazon. I started off the PCT using a Katadyn Be Free and a 3-liter Hydro Pack, and it worked okay, but significantly heavier. Poop kit, very important. Again, superfluous bag. Yes, it costs extra weight, but I like having something I can grab and run off with. And I just destroy Ziplocs, so it's worth the wait for me. Biggest thing I got in here is I have the Deuce shovel. I know people that will swear up and down that they're able to dig holes just by, kicking the dirt with their heel. Might work in the Sierra and some of those friendly spots, but this thing is really good when you get into rocky terrain. Doesn't weigh much. They make 3 different ones that are different strengths. This is the number 2, ironically. And then I have hand sanitizer, and the other thing that I like to carry are wipes. So I use the baby butt wipes instead of toilet paper. Little extra weight, but for me they just keep you a lot cleaner, and they're a lot more efficient than carrying around toilet paper. Plus, if they get wet, who cares? And then I have just a shopping bag and a Ziploc where I put the dirty wipes, and then next trash I get to, I throw them away. First aid kit, so I know I've mentioned a few of these items before because of where I keep them stored, but this is all I carry. When I see people with these huge first aid kits, I always kind of shake my head, because the reality is your first aid kit just needs whatever you need to get to the next town, to get to the next road, to get out. So over the years, I've had more or less stuff, but this is kind of what I use now. So Metolius climber tape. This is, you can see it's kind of cloth-like. For me, this is the best thing I've found for blisters, because I can put it on over the blister, and even if I sweat, it holds on but not too tight. Using duct tape, I just sweat that off. And even worse, the people that put duct tape on water bottles or poles and then try and peel it off and put it on the blister, yeah, that's not going to stick worth a damn, at least if you sweat as much as me. A&D, a friend of mine showed me this during the PCT, and this really saved me when I was having some sweat abrasions on my back. Basically, if you have any sort of a abrasion or rash, it just helps you heal a little more. I went through a lot of this on the PCT, so I like to keep it handy. This is something that I've just picked up recently. I tried a few of the friction sticks and they never worked really well. This one actually does. It's pretty much the consistency of underarm deodorant, but I've had some friction issues between my thighs while I've been hiking along, and this seems to help, so I'm keeping this handy. This is something I may be getting rid of. I generally carry lotion because when I do winter camping, especially, it gets so dry my knuckles will crack. And last year I was having some abrasions on my foot that if I didn't keep moist would crack and also cause a lot of pain. I haven't used this, and honestly I'm probably going to toss it and get another one later if I need it, because I carry it. Then I got my pills. Imodium, which if you hike without Imodium, you're braver than me. I have saved people's day having this, and nothing's worse than having diarrhea out in the middle of nowhere. And then this is just ibuprofen type, Advil. Everybody uses that out here. I carry a prescription for Flagyl. It's really easy to get from your doctor. This is in case I get Giardia, because things happen out in the wilderness. I carried one last year and I did have to use it near Julian. You can look up my PCT hike if you want to see that story. Basically, this saves me from having to hike out in misery, get to a doctor, get pills if I'm out in the middle of nowhere. And it's cheap and easy to get. I carry a butterfly bandage or two just because if something's really bleeding, these help. These things I mostly use to pop blisters. I also was using them to attach a sign to my pack on the first part. The sign, even though it was laminated, got a little wet, so I had to get rid of that. And then this is my little miscellaneous bag. So I have tenacious tape for fixing any gear that breaks. I have a little bit of gauze. I have a toe cap I cut down just in case I have some weird sort of blister. I have one zip tie, and this is a vegetable bag from the store. I carry those because when it gets really cold, if your feet just will not warm up and you're worried about your toes, put that bag outside your sock, inside your shoe. You're going to turn into a sweat swamp, but the vapor barrier does keep your feet warmer. We use that a lot when we're going winter camping and somebody's boots are a little too thin. So I just always carry them. Then I have my emergency Mylar blanket just in case. I have had to use those before. I've spent a night in them and they're not ideal, but they're way better than not having them. I have spare lip balm because I have run out of that in the middle of nowhere and it really sucks to have to go 5 days with your lips burning. And I wasn't able to get my normal stick of Cardin, so my cousin was nice enough to run these down for me. I carry a bug net. I use the barrier method, meaning I wear rain gear and wind pants rather than spray. But when you need them, you need them. And I was particularly concerned when I get into tick country later that I have something, because I've been through tick country before when I didn't have anything and it was exhausting to just have to flick them all off one after another. I always carry a bug net just because if any sort of bugs get bad, these are worth their weight in gold. You can put up with a lot if you can keep the mosquitoes just off of your face. Weighs almost nothing. I just keep it in this to kind of protect it. This is just another sil nylon stuff sack. I ordered a bunch of them from Anti-Gravity Gear a number of years ago, and that's what I tend to lean on pretty heavily. Along the same lines, this is what I refer to as my dental hygienic taco. It's something I got off Amazon a couple of years ago and it just amuses me, so I keep it. I was all ready to repack into a Ziploc and I just decided, I like my taco. So I keep my toothpaste, floss. I keep a comb because my hair is kind of long now and I haven't figured out how to live without a comb. I'm not used to long hair if you can't tell. I have a little fold-up toothbrush and couple of random hair ties just so I can help manage my hair. And one of my favorites, being a geek, electronics. I did a deep dive in what I used on the PCT and why, but just to go over things really quick. I wanted to get rid of all of the disposable batteries because I just felt bad having to throw them all away, plus having to, keep up with how many do I carry. So I went with rechargeable. This is an Anker 20K battery. It is the speed variety, meaning it charges fully in 3 to 4 hours. That is huge because it really sucks to get to a town. You just want to pick up your stuff and go, and there's your battery at 2 dots, and you're going to need more power to get to the next camp or the next town. For me, the 20K lasts up to 2 weeks if I'm careful. If I'm not and I'm making a bunch of videos, it might do less, but it's a good amount for me. It is heavy. In order to charge quickly, you have to have a high capacity wall plug. Now you notice this has a single USB port. They do make these wall plugs that have multiple ports, but a lot of the times if you have 2 ports, it actually drops the output. And again, this combo lets it charge in 3 or 4 hours, so it works for me. I'm also a big believer in marking your battery and your wall plug because when you're at a trail town, a lot of the charging stations will have, 15 anchors or batteries just plugged in, and I don't want somebody grabbing my battery. I carry 3 cables. They're all USB-C since I can plug them into this guy or the wall. So I have a USB-C to USB-C, which is wall to battery. I have a USB-C to Lightning, which is either to my iPhone. And then I have this, which is a USB-C to mini or micro, whatever, which one that was. And that lets me charge my headlamp and my inReach. My headlamp is a night core. I found this when I started to look into doing the PCT. It's a great little light. It has a red light, has a white light, and I don't know how long the battery lasts, but I'll say I have never run it down in one go yet. Some people will replace this band with a lighter option, and that's something I've thought about, but I just haven't had time to screw with it when I was around in town. And then I have an InReach Mini, which I carry. I send a preset every night, which basically says, I'm okay, this is where I'm camping. That way my girlfriend and my family know that I'm okay when I'm out of touch for long periods. It also has an SOS button, so if I break my leg in some remote area, or more likely I find somebody who's in really bad shape, as has happened a couple of times, I can get help. And the InReach has the advantage over the Spot in that it actually works. Don't get me started on how crappy Spot is as a company. And it can do two-way communication, either through this device slowly or paired with a phone. So if you have to hit that SOS, the person can actually contact you and say what's your emergency and prioritize how quickly they're going to get help to you. Also, it lets you send text messages. I have the basic plan, which is $12 a month, and I think I get 10 messages per month for free. Now, getting a message is one message, sending a message is one message. So you go through that pretty quickly, and I think now they're 50 cents each if you go over. I've had an $80 bill due to those when things went bad in Washington last year, but to me, that's better than paying a higher monthly rate when I'm not using it most of the time. This is a beanie. The reason it's with my electronics is batteries tend to run down in the cold. So I usually keep my battery just wrapped up in the beanie, and I'll put the battery in my sleeping bag at night, but this gives me a little more insulation, and I got to carry it somewhere. It's blaze orange beanie because I'm going through hunting areas out here. Oh yeah, and I use the Apple EarPods for headphones. I've had those go out on me before, so I carry a spare. There's also a piece of toilet paper in here that's just, general if I need some sort of a paper towel in the tent. But I really, really like having an extra pair of EarPods because I don't want to be that person who's blaring music going down the trail annoying everybody else. And listening to music or audiobooks really makes a bad day go faster. Shoe-wise, I am using the Ultra Olympus. I upgraded to these after using the Lone Peaks on the PCT. The Lone Peaks worked fairly well for me, but my feet were pretty torn up. These are supposed to have a little more protection, so I thought I'd try them. And they do seem to be helping a little bit. You can see they are significantly thicker down here. Also, they haven't had the issue that the Lone Peaks had, at least so far, where they start to dissolve along here when they get wet. But biggest problem is, you see how far the backs flare out? I've actually had an issue where a couple of times a day when I'm not paying attention, I'll clip my ankle bone to the point where it's actually been bleeding a couple of times. I don't know if that's just me being clumsy or an issue that everybody has, but overall, these guys work pretty well for me. I have another pair waiting for me a couple hundred miles ahead, so guess they'll be good enough for now. Also, since I wear size 14, it is really hard to find shoes that fit just along the trail, so I got to plan ahead. If you're wondering why the lighting in the background keeps changing, it's because the sun has kind of gone away into the clouds, so I keep trying to light this decently in a kind of limited hotel room. Okay, so rain gear. Big believer in always carrying rain gear. I saw some people along the PCT last year who decided to skimp on that and got burned a little bit. I have a Black Diamond Stormline stretch jacket. It was new a couple of years ago. Decided to give it a try. It helped that it's lime green, one of my favorite colors. And this has actually been really good. Even when I was in Washington in downpours that lasted for days, this kept me dry. It ventilates well, so you're not just turning into a complete sweat mess on the inside. So really happy with this. And then I'm not carrying rain pants right now. I keep debating whether I want to get them or not. I've been doing a rain skirt. So it's basically like a kilt made of waterproof-ish material. The advantage of this is if you sweat a lot like me, if you're hiking in it, you don't sweat as much, and it protects you down to, mid-thigh, which is enough. You don't care if your legs are wet while you're going along. One downside is, let's say I get into snow or something like that, I can't really wear long johns under this unless I'm willing to let my long johns get wet. I haven't had weather that was cold enough where I really had to worry about it, but that might be the one reason that I would swap this out for rain pants proper. And then these serial killer gloves. These are something I read about online. One of the problems I had last year in Washington was when it was raining endlessly, my hands would get cold. And I like using hiking poles, and I had to not use the hiking pole to have my hand, in my pockets, in my pants, just trying to warm them up so they wouldn't freeze, and then I would be sliding around. So these are waterproof, supposedly breathable, and long distance hikers say they keep you warm. Now, again, you look kind of disturbing wearing them, but hey, guess they'll work. I haven't had to use them yet, so they're just kind of sitting there waiting, but I hear there's going to be, I've had 6 days of rain so far, and I'm expecting more once I get further north. So the one other piece that I would really call rain gear is my pack liner. So this is just a giant trash bag. I go back and forth between these clear ones and just like a 39-gallon yard bag. Basically anything that I worry about getting wet goes inside this. So it goes into the pack. My sleeping bag, my clothes, and my electronics bag all go inside this. Anything that I care less about, like let's say my tent's already wet, that can go outside. My food bag, who cares about that? That can go outside. Then if it rains, I don't care if my pack gets wet. Now, the other option is I could have a rain cover on the pack. I've done that, but in Washington last year, where I was in a downpour for literally days, water was sheeting off of my hood, and I could feel it like flowing between the back of my jacket and the pack. And a rain cover wouldn't have helped. That would have soaked in, and I could have had an issue. With this, I really don't have to worry, and I don't have another thing I have to get out when it starts raining. It's just kind of like, oh yeah, it's raining. Now, in the West Coast where rain's more predictable, I was just using this whenever I knew it was going to rain or it looked like it was going to rain. Out here, I've been getting rained on a lot more, so I've started just using it every day. The only downside of using it every day is eventually this will start to develop holes, and then I'll have to replace it. So that's the only reason why I don't always like using it. Also, I can be a little rougher when I'm jamming things inside the pack. Okay, and clothing. So I'm a big believer in sun hoodies. Most of the pictures you see of me, I have a sun hoodie and the hood's pulled up. I use the Arc'teryx version just because of any of the ones I have tried, this one seems to dry the fastest. I do wish it came in maybe like a bright green color, but what can you do? Normally I carry 3 pairs of underwear. I'm only carrying 2 at the moment because I've been putting holes in them. I actually have more than I'm picking up tomorrow. I used to go by these ex officio boxers. I've had a little bit issues with them crawling up my thigh while I'm hiking and not protecting me from chafing. I like these boxer briefs that go down kind of low. So I'm going to get another pair of Sacks, and I'm going to try some compression shorts just to see how those work for me. Long johns. These are just, mid-weight. I love these. If it gets cold, I sleep in them. I can hike in them if I need to. I'm a big believer in through hiking in shorts because when I do pants, I sweat too much and they never dry. I got these Patagonia baggies because they were bright orange, and I figured if I'm walking along the road in the Keys, I'm less likely to get run over if I'm in this color. They come with a liner. I ended up cutting it out. Also, these are honestly way too big for me. They were the size that they had in stock, though, and I really wanted that color. I may swap them out. I had the Patagonia, I think, Cat of Nine Tails, something like that, before. And those worked really well, so I may go back to that. This is my Arc'teryx fleece jacket. I love this thing, even though it's a little beat up these days. My fleece is the insulating layer from when I'm hiking, and then I generally have an insulating layer for camp. Right now, I don't have one of those with me because I wore out my Ghost Whisperer last year, and I'm waiting for my Enlightened Equipment Apex insulating jacket to be sent to me. So I should have that in a couple of weeks when it gets cold enough. These are Dirty Girl Gaiters. I haven't been wearing them that much out here, but on trail on the PCT, they were great. They clip in on the front, and then they go to the gator trap in the back of the Ultras, and they're just enough to keep dirt and rocks and things from getting in the socks. I really like buffs, so I carry 2 of these. I'll add it to the back of my pack sometimes when I'm going through hunting areas. That's why I have the bright orange, so I'm a little more visible. And I wear them under my hat just to help me keep my hair under control. This being the times of COVID, I've got my mask for whenever I'm in town. I keep all of this in these sil nylon stuff sacks. They're not waterproof, they're water resistant. I may be swapping these out for a stuff sack like I have my sleeping bag in because it's waterproof and I just really like those DCF bags. We'll see. This, of course, is Peepers, kind of my mascot. I've had him with me for the JMT, PCT, and a bunch of other things. I just have him in a bag so he didn't get, moldy in the swamp. These are Crocs. I do not like these as camp shoes anymore. I swear by these $3 flip-flops you get at Walmart that are just made out of foam. However, I knew I was going to have wet feet for days in the swamp and be wading through knee-deep water, so I decided to wear these and put a pair of socks on. Worked fairly well. If I could be sure that I wasn't going to hit another swamp for a couple hundred miles, I would be sending these off and going back to those flip-flops. The flip-flops are just nicer to walk around in, especially if your feet are beat up. These bumps in the bottom of the Crocs are enough to, hurt on my beat-up feet. And I just don't like the feel of walking around in these anymore. Sun gloves, I use these when I'm out. You can see if you look close that I have a tan running along where the strap of my hiking pole goes. And I just like avoiding sun damage when I can. I used to hike in a Tilley Airflow, really liked it, but it doesn't fit well underneath the sun hoodie, so I decided to go with a ball cap. I have a huge head, so this thing barely fits. I really wish these guys had a little bit bigger of a hat, but I make it work just barely. Plus, that was another item where I wanted to look like a hiker when I was going through the Keys just to avoid any police issues. I have my Oakley sunglasses. Yeah, they look kind of douchey, but I like the colors and they work well on me. When I smile, most sunglasses hit my cheeks. Sock-wise, I usually use Darn Tough, midweight or lightweight. Most of mine were in pretty bad shape, but not quite enough where I could exchange them. I had a pair of Smart Wools, so I'm using those. My other pair is currently soaking in the sink because I used them through a swamp and they're covered with debris. I may have to get rid of those and get another one. These are Engine toe sock liners. I'm trying these this year because I had a weird issue last year on the PCT where my foot would get abraded on the arch. And these are a little softer. I still haven't been able to 100% figure out why that happened, but I figured I'd give these a shot. Downside is they don't seem to last long. I'm already getting holes in them, and I've only had them for a couple hundred miles. We'll see. I also carry one extra shirt. This is a hiking shirt. It's short sleeve. It's Arc'teryx, because again, I like how they fit on my shoulders. This is a sleeping layer when it's warm and just something to give me an option if it's too warm and I don't want to use the long sleeve or if that starts to fail. These pants I actually really, really like. They're from Enlightened Equipment and they're custom made, so you can pick the color. They're going to match with that insulating jacket I was telling you about. I use these when it's a little bit cold, so I don't have to take off my shorts if I'm wearing like long johns or anything. Instead, I just put these over the shorts and it's warm enough. And also when there's mosquitoes, this is a really good barrier. They wad up really, really small. They weigh almost nothing. They're one of my favorite pieces of gear. So that's pretty much it. I will include a lighter pack link in the description if you're kind of curious what some of these things are and where to buy them. As far as changes so far, the biggest thing is I had a sun umbrella. I brought it because I was in the Keys and I was walking the canals in the sun all day, and somebody advised me that, well, you may want shade. Yeah, so the problem is it weighs a couple of ounces and it's made out of carbon fiber. So when you have the umbrella extended, I would have it on my pack, and when the wind would come up, it would have a tendency to pull the umbrella out and it would go sailing or they break. Once I got into the swamp, I ended up losing the handle because it was sticking up and it just wasn't worth it. out of the 20 some days I've done so far, I think I was able to use the umbrella for a limited amount of time twice. And both times I ended up having to take it off earlier than I wanted because there was just too strong a wind coming through. So I love the idea of them. They just don't seem to be for me. I did the same thing on the PCT. I carried it. I barely used it. I got more use out of it when I did part of the desert trail, but I don't think I'm going to try those again. I'm just going to stick with my sun hoodie and layers. You might have also noticed the one thing I didn't mention was any sort of a stove. Normally I have a Soto Windmaster and an MSR pot and a small titanium cup that I carry. I decided for this, since I was going through the Keys and I was going to be stealth camping, that it wasn't worth carrying. Also, I've heard some people having some trouble getting fuel out here, so I decided to just keep it simple. I started out cold soaking. Now I'm not even doing that. I'm just eating tortillas, peanut butter, things like that. And it's reduced the amount of water I need, and it's just made things a little simpler, and at least for now, I'm okay with it. Once I get back to the wilderness and I'm kind of back in the groove and enjoying my camps a little more, I'll probably go back to having fuel. But for now, it's working out.